Hello friends, and welcome to the video version of the Colored Pencil Workshop. While we won't be able to be together in person, you get a front row seat. Our subject today is a pear. It's a very simple shape, but it has so much wonderful coloring and shading in there. I'm really looking forward to spending time with you and tackling this subject. It's going to be fun. Well, it's been so long, hasn't it? I hope you're all doing well. By now you will have gotten the subject and the template to download and print on your computer. If you don't have a printer, you can save them on a memory card and bring them to Staples and print them out that way. If you've never done it before, I'm sure they can help you with that. The first thing I ask folks when they come to the workshop is, would you like to draw the subject freehand or use the template? The advantage of having a template is you can skip right from the drawing and go right to the colored pencils. It saves a lot of time. Or if you don't feel particularly comfortable or confident in drawing, it's a helpful tool to use. If you draw freehand, however, which I do recommend, especially for simple subjects, over time drawing that way helps you learn to draw a lot better. As I had said, you have the option of drawing freehand or using a template. If you are going to use your template, you simply put some graphite paper on top of your drawing paper and put the template on top of it and trace that, but most likely you're not going to have graphite paper, so I have a little trick I do myself. I usually do the things the hard way anyway, so what I usually do is I take my drawing, or in your case it would be the template that you're using, and I would take that, turn it over, and scrape it with pencil graphite. That serves as a graphite kind of paper. And you take the picture, the template, and put it on top of your drawing paper and trace that. In any case, you can start drawing now, and if you don't have any way to print out the subject or the template, you can simply follow along with the video and follow along with what we're doing. You can go back, and I did post the picture of the subject there. If you put it on your computer screen and pause it right there, you can draw it right from the computer. While you're drawing, how about a word from the colored pencil doctor? The colored pencil doctor is in the house. I'm not here to cure what ails you. It's more like preventative medicine to help you achieve a more calming and peaceful journey when you're drawing with colored pencils. In our first segment, I'll be sharing with you some details about surfaces. That's very important. Certainly, the kind of colored pencil you use is extremely important, but the surface is equally as important. The first thing I should stress about that is you need a stiff surface. You never want to use regular, normal drawing paper. Looking to see if I have any here. I don't have any to show you, but don't ever use conventional drawing paper when you're using colored pencils, since it's all about layering and burnishing. You just have two layers on there, and the paper's already crinkled, and there won't be any burnishing either because it just won't accept the colored pencils. There are a number of different options you can use for a surface. Keep in mind, you just want to make sure it's firm and it has a stiff consistency to it. After that, it pretty much boils down to what your preferences is. What I use is an art board for my fine art that I do. I use an art board. It takes a lot longer to do that, It takes many hours to achieve what I do. 16 by 20 pictures can take me upwards of 100 hours to do. I don't do that when I have my classes because we just don't have time to do that. I have a kind of a mid-ground there, and I'll range between a number of different things. Very often in my classes I use mixed media paper. It's stiff enough to do colored pencils on, and it doesn't require a million layers. It's a good example to use. Over time, I've kind of been a little dissatisfied with that because I don't think it has enough texture, and I would like it to have a little bit more layering in that. So I'm kind of exploring different things to use. There's actually something called colored pencil paper that you can buy by Strathmore. I don't think I've used that in one of my classes yet, and I'm thinking about using it for this workshop, so we'll see how that goes. It's not always easy to find in the store, and besides that, I usually order all my stuff online. It's just cheaper and a lot more convenient. Another option is watercolor paper. That has a nice good stiffness to it. As you can see, this is what you want. You never want to use drawing paper or anything flimsy. It has to have a stiff surface to accept the colored pencils. The major difference with watercolor paper is it has a lot more texture than any other paper you're going to use, including artboard. Now, if you want to follow along in this workshop with artboard, feel free to do that. You certainly are flexible with your time. The video is here once you have it to use anytime you want and as long as you want. It's pretty much up to you. Experiment. Go to the store. Go to the art store. Take out a few of the pads and run your finger over them. See what kind of texture you like and experiment with them. Over time, I'm sure you'll figure out which one is right for you. Just always remember to have a firm surface so that it can withstand the layers of colored pencils. I'll have this fun little segment regularly, so if you have any questions about colored pencils, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to answer them. Send me your name and the town you live in, and I'll share them with the folks in the video. That'll be fun. A list of the colored pencils that you will need for this particular subject were provided for you, so I hope you have those handy. I hope you have a pencil sharpener as well. It's always good to have a sharp point. I love sharp points indeed. So why don't we get right to it? Oh, by the way, I got kind of a rather Spartan background here. It's very simple. We are in the process of moving, so unless I can squeeze one more colored pencil workshop before we do move, the next time I'm with you, it'll be a completely different background. And yes, that does mean I will be doing these video colored pencil workshops regularly, so look forward to seeing them. Why don't we get started? We are ready to begin. I hope you'll bear with me as I start this journey of colored pencil workshop videos. I'm kind of learning as I going along, and lighting and arranging the camera and all that has proven to be taken me about an hour and a half to try to figure that out. Hopefully over time I'll learn how to do that better, and certainly when we move we'll uh, have a new opportunity to try things there. Our closing date has been moved back for the second time, so I will have time to do at least one more colored pencil video. Now, I have my image of the pear already drawn on here. Uh, I drew my picture on drawing paper, as I said before, and I covered the background with graphite paper, and I took that drawing and applied it to my surface, which is colored pencil paper this time around. Let's see if I can get that here. Try to get my head out of the way. I'm using this as my selection. You don't have to use that. You can use whatever stiff surface that you prefer. I just thought I would try out the colored pencil paper because I've never used it before, and I'm anxious to see what exactly it's going to come out to be like. The paper itself is actually rather thin, and it has a very smooth surface. So if my picture looks smoother than yours, that's the reason why. The surface is very smooth, but it seems to be able to take through whatever they make it out of more layers. So on your part, you will have taken, if you used a template, taken your template and scraped the back with graphite paper and applied it to your paper so that we can begin doing the colored pencils, or else you have drawn it freehand by now. Now, I do want to stress that during my color pencil classes, they're usually very social events. So there's conversation and people sharing with each other, and on my part, I pause between what I'm doing to allow other people to catch up to where we are. So that naturally takes a bit of time, and normally during those workshops we usually don't even finish the subject completely. And my purpose with the workshops is to give you the basics of how to do colored pencils. And the blessing for me is that whenever somebody takes it home and finishes it and shares the image with me, like through an email or something, I just love that. I love when that happens. But I just want you to know that it's going to be different with the video, in the sense that I'm going to be going at my own pace. I won't be able to pause to answer questions. There won't be the social engagement, and I won't have the ability to gauge where people are in their level of following me so that I can slow down. So I'm going to try to go slow, but I'm going to go at a steady pace. So you may want to pause at certain periods in the video so you can gather the ideas and go at your own pace. But I did want to warn you ahead of time that's how I'll be doing it. As I shared with you in the information of the requirements you will need for this workshop, we have the following colored pencils we'll be using, and they're all Prismacolor. I use Prismacolor in every workshop. It keeps it simple. They're less expensive, and they're easier to get, and they have a ton of different colors. Artist grade colored pencils are key. They are very important for doing colored pencils. It's all about layering. Layering on top of layers, color on top of color, shading on top of shading. Colored pencils is all about layering. Colored pencils are made out of wax. So as you will see as we go along, each layer is going to be rather translucent until we put enough layers on top of each other that it becomes opaque. It's a building process is really what it is, rather than, say, if I were to paint this with oil paints, the Pear, I would be applying the colors on canvas, the direct opaque color on the canvas, and mixing all the colors in there and all the shading. The difference with colored pencils is that we work from light to dark, and we build those layers. We build the colors with layers on top of layers, and we achieve that by building. And you'll see how that goes as we go along. But as I was saying, the following color pencils is what we will be using. We'll be using pale vermilion, apple green, black, 70% cool gray, 50% warm gray, goldenrod, light green, ginger root, dark brown, light umber, beige, sienna brown, terracotta, and of course, one of the most important things, our white colored pencil. So that is the selection of colors that we will be working with. If you had trouble obtaining them through the challenges of things being rather challenging out there these days and acquiring materials, you can use whatever the closest colors are that you have available. So, let's get started. Now, what we are doing here is we're drawing what we see. My classes involve realism. How far you want to pursue that on your own end is up to you. But what we basically do is we draw what we see. So we're going to be bouncing our eyes back and forth between the subject and our drawing. That's very important. If you start drawing the pear and all you ever look at is your paper, and you keep your eyes on your paper and you don't really look at the subject, you start drawing what you think the pear looks like, or a cliche of a pear in your head, and it turns out a little bit more like an illustration instead of being realistic looking. And certainly there is room for all kinds of different styles of art, but when you're learning art, the best way to learn is to draw what you see and concentrate on light, shade, and hue. You can see that the light is mostly coming from the right here on the picture, although there is some light on the left there that's kind of muted, you can see there. But the first thing that I look for, as I said, we're building our subject. The first thing I look for is the lightest color. Now, let me just sharpen my pencil here. Okay. We got, let's see. I think I'm going to do something a little different this time. First of all, why don't we do this? You can see I have pencil lines on the paper here, and the pencil lines are going to show through the colored pencil. So often what I like to do is take a similar color to the color of the subject, and in this case it's goldenrod, and I'm going to outline the pencil here with goldenrod first. Okay, and then I'm going to take an eraser, which in my case here is a kneaded eraser. I need it very much. It's also called a kneaded eraser. It's a very soft eraser. It doesn't tear the paper up, and it lifts the graphite very well. So I have an outline now instead of the pencil of colored pencil outline. I'll outline the other side over here. There we go. It's not something in a class that's really terribly important. If a few pencil lines show through, that's okay. We're not going to sweat it, but I do like to erase some of them just to get a better idea there. And I can already see that in my list, I forgot to mention yellow, and I will correct that in an updated list when I share it on the website, but I'll just get that out here too. So in addition to all the colors that I mentioned, we'll be using yellow, especially right here on the right. Let me adjust some of the shading guideline here. All right. So we have a pear that has rich color, a lot of shading. It's a really cool looking pear. With a pear, you usually think kind of like a golden yellow color, but look at all that wonderful color and shading in there. That's really exciting. I love that. So the first thing I look at, instead of the impact of the shading and the really dark colors, since we're building the subject, I look at the lightest color. And that's the first thing that I lay down. It serves two purposes. One, it's the very first layer of the building process. And two, it gives our eyes something to focus on in terms of forming the pear. So I'm putting a light layer here of yellow. It may at times appear like I'm going rather fast in my gestures as I draw in the workshops. I don't really worry about that in the beginning of the subject, because we're going to build so many layers on top of that that it's going to disappear. When I do my own work, I kind of do things a little more gently. Not always, but generally speaking. I'm putting a layer of yellow over on the left side of the pear as well. I'm not worrying about putting too much yellow in there because the yellow is mostly predominant on the right side. Now, this is the part where I always remind people that if you are new to colored pencils, this is going to be the moment when you're going to wonder, what in the world are we doing? How are we going to draw that with something that looks like crayon? But that's what this workshop is all about, the basics of colored pencils. In the very beginning, it doesn't look like much at all. It looks like crayon. But we're going to discover the secret of how to build a subject with colored pencils. So, I put down a layer of yellow. Next, I'll be using goldenrod, and just for your convenience, I'll be calling out the number each time I mention a color. The number really isn't important except to help you find out which color to use if you have a large collection of colored pencils. I'm using goldenrod, that's number 1034, and I'll be mostly putting that on the right side. I'm going to be very gentle here in the middle where the shading is starting. So I'm building a layer of goldenrod on top of the layer of yellow. Again, I'm working from light to dark, not only with the touch of my hand and the layers of colored pencils. I'm working from light to dark in terms of hue and shading. Each part of the colored pencil process is a process of building. That's something very important that we have to remember. Another important thing is the pressure that you're using on the paper. I'm using a rather light touch here. If you were to start off with a very heavy hand and put down a very thick layer of colored pencil, for instance, I can show you an example here. If I were to start out from the very beginning, putting down a very heavy layer of goldenrod on the paper, you can see how much darker it is and how much more it's pressing into the green of the paper. Now, I may have an immediate impact of color there, but the disadvantage of that is when I go back to layer on top of it and mix the reds and the browns and the yellows and all those kinds of things, when I try to put that on top of something that's already so thick, since colored pencils is made out of wax, I'm not going to be able to add very much layers in there, and very shortly the layering process is going to fail, and I'm not going to be able to put any more layers there. I'm sorry that the top of my semi-hairy bald head keeps poking in the camera. I'm very new to doing videos, and certainly with very rudimentary things, trying to make them like tape and a camera from my computer here. I'm holding it up with tape. I'm working the best I can here. Over time, I'll get better equipment and better lighting, and also learn how to do these a lot better. So please bear with me, as it seems a little, at times, hesitant or crude in terms of my presentation with the video itself. Alrighty. Now, even to this day, and certainly when I began colored pencils, uh, the part that we are at right now would leave me kind of like feeling, good gravy, what in the world is this going to be? It really doesn't look like much, does it? But nowadays, since I know what to anticipate, and since I know so fully that colored pencils is all about layering, I know what's coming up. So even what we're doing now for me is exciting, knowing what's ahead, and knowing, to me, this is so cool. To me, one of the most fun things about colored pencils, I must say, is you can take something so simple and so humble, a pencil, a colored pencil, you can take them and make beautiful artwork out of them. It's so cool. And you can make the kind of art that turns out to look like a painting, or at least has a painterly effect. It has a very fine artsy kind of feel to it. What we're doing isn't going to look like crayon when we're done. And there is a wide flexibility with colored pencils. Not everybody does it in the same style. Not everyone will do it with the same realism that I do in my own personal work. They might not do it to the same level that I do. When I do my artwork on artboard, it takes many hours, and I push the colored pencil to the point where the artboard will not take any more of the wax of the colored pencils. And some of you are already familiar with that in terms of the mixed media paper. It will only take so much. But I push it very far with the realism and very far with the layering, but not everyone does that. By now, some of you have come to my classes enough times to have settled into your own style, and you've come to realize that you like a more loose style, a more impressionistic style, or perhaps you like a lot of line directions in what you're doing, and that's perfectly fine. You see, what I'm doing here is, excuse me, what I'm doing here is I'm not teaching you how to do colored pencils like me. I'm teaching you the basics of how to achieve fine art with colored pencils, and the level that you would like to do and take it however far you want to is not, it's up to you, it's up to your personality, it's up to what you prefer, it's up to the style that you like. That part is all up to you, and it's all good. So, we have a layer of yellow here. We have a layer of goldenrod. Next, I'll be tackling this green area here. But again, as I'm building layers from light to dark, I'm going to look at a more pale green to lay down instead of the darkest green there. The first one I will be using is light green, number 920. And I'll be putting a layer of that down here on the bottom of the pear. There we go. Alrighty. Earlier we had some thunderstorms rolling in and quite a bit of rain, but I see it's it's cleared up there outside, so I hope it stays that way for a while so it doesn't create any mayhem in what we're doing here. Okay. We have a very simple subject here with a very simple shape, but boy, does it have a lot going on in it, and it's got just the right kind of stuff that an artist loves. A lot of different colors. No matter what subject you're doing, it could be an apple, a pear, it could be some kind of wooden box or some object made out of metal with rust in it. And it really doesn't matter what you're doing. It could be the surface of this table. You're going to find that when you're dealing with color, color is really not a very simple thing. You can say the pear is yellow or gold, but really, even in the area with that color, there are different shades of the yellow, different shades of the color. There's different nuances to the color. And as much as we can capture of that is what's really going to make the artwork come alive. I've said it many times, if you go in an art gallery, sometimes you're going to see art that really pops, it really excites your eyes. And then other times you're going to see artwork that looks a little flat and your eyes aren't really as excited with it. And you're going to notice that one of the reasons for that, and it's not just realism, it could be impressionism too, it could be any style, it's the nuance of color. If I were to draw a water scene, if I put down a light layer of blue and it had no nuance of shading, no nuance of different shades of blue, and it was just flat blue, it would look very boring to the eye, and it wouldn't really have that artistic excitement to it. So that's why I like to really stress the nuances of color, and honestly, it's really a lot of fun. When it comes to artwork, certainly I do concentrate on the shading and the impactful parts, but the things that really excite me are the subtleties. There's so much subtlety in the colors and the shading and the different hues and the levels of different color in there. That's what really excites me. Okay, so we put down that light layer of green on the bottom there. I got my dentist drill colored pencil sharpener here, and I'm going to go back using my goldenrod, number 1034. And again, I apologize if I'm going too fast for you. If I am, feel free to pause the video. The good thing about this video is that once you purchase it, you can refer to it anytime you want to. You don't have to do the whole class in one shot. You can come back to it. You could refer to it again whenever you want, and the video is yours for good once you purchase it. You can keep working however you like and whenever you like. And that's pretty much how I'm going to go about the colored pencil workshops. I'm not exactly sure, but I think my next subject will be a rosebud, but I'm going to be visiting a number of different subjects, and there will, I hope, come a time when we do colored pencils workshops in person again after all the coronavirus and adjusting to that is done, and one day we can all gather together again. But even when that is the case, I think I'm going to start doing these regularly because it enables me to reach a wider audience so that people, there's been some people that have wanted to come to my workshops, but they live too far away. Some people live in a different state, or they may even live in a different country. This enables you to be able to do it no matter where you are. Indeed. Alrighty. Now, how about a little, let's see. I'm going to add some beige. beige is number 997. Alrighty, I'm going to be using that color. My shadow is kind of, arm shadow is covering here. Um, Again, I'm kind of experimenting here. Over time, I'll learn how to figure this all out. And as I said, we're in the process of moving. You wouldn't believe what it actually looks like in this room right now. All you're seeing is the table. I'm surrounded by boxes and things laying all over, and pretty much it's chaos in here. It doesn't make for a very calm brain sometime. Oh, yes. But that'll be taken care of in the future, Lord willing, when things come together. I'm putting beige on top of the light yellow area here. Now, very similar to watercolors, with colored pencils, when you have a white area, in this case, it would be the highlights, especially on the right here. That highlight isn't quite white. It's lighter than the other colors. But when you have a white area with colored pencils, you leave that blank, just the same as you would with watercolor. The only difference with that would be is if you were doing colored pencils on a colored surface, like if it was a black artboard or a light blue artboard. That would be the only time when white would actually serve as an application of color on the subject. The next color I will be using is ginger root. That's number 1084. And again, I'm working on the lighter side on the right here. And I'm concentrating on the darker hues here, right along this area and down here. Again, I can't stress enough, as I draw, my eyes bounce back and forth between my drawing and the subject. That's very important. We're drawing what we see. In order to draw what we see, we need to see it, of course. But if, say, I were to bend my head down and just keep drawing my pear, and I don't really look at the subject, again, what happens is you start drawing the cliche of a pear and what your mind thinks a pear looks like, and it may look somewhat like a pear, but it will miss all the shading and the light source, and you'll come out with something that looks like an illustration or a cartoon. And another advantage of drawing what you see over time is you learn so much more about drawing. You learn about color and shading. You learn about light source, which is there's light source and shading is extremely key. It's what makes things look more realistic. It's what makes them look 3D and give them a real feel. Even if I were using an impressionistic style or a style that wasn't realism, the shading will give it a form that you can appreciate as a real pear, in other words. Okay. Again, I'll be going back to the goldenrod, number 1034. Some of you are familiar with my workshops and kind of are quite aware of how I go about them by now, and you're probably half ahead of me, I'm sure. I forgot what my point is. What was my point? I don't know. I forgot my point. That's okay. We're using goldenrod. We'll be mixing some of that in there. As you can see, the green is a very complicated green. It has a lot of nuance to it. You can see, now you gotta look closely at it and really keep your mind from seeing simply green. There's goldenrod in there. There's a sienna color in there. There's dark brown on the bottom where the shading of the pear is. There's so much nuance in there. And the more we mix of that, the more we apply it to the paper, the more exciting and the more pop the art is really going to have. And it's just going to look so much, it'll have so much richness to it. So I'm applying goldenrod here. Trying to get my head out of the way. I see quite a bit of it on the bottom there. I'm going to mix some up here. Pull it down inside of the green. You can see that the goldenrod on top of the green doesn't have a major impact, and that's perfectly fine. That is something you want to expect when you're doing colored pencils. It's something that you want to welcome, something that you want to cooperate with. As I said, you never want to go that route. We're building the subject. I'll just pull a little bit more of the goldenrod up here and mix it in there. There we go. I don't know if it's coming out, but Shree's having fun on the phone downstairs. We've had delays with the move, and now she has to call back everybody and tell them there are complications. There's a lot of people that are coming forward to help, and now we got to tell them that things have changed. That's okay. God has us moving into a better place and a better life, and we're really looking forward to it. I can't quite wrap my head around it, because I didn't really notice it that much when I was there. Shree has been telling me this, but apparently the studio that I will have in our new place is going to be much bigger than my art room here where I live now, which will be wonderful. That means I can do my artwork. I can not only work on my colored pencils, but I can do my oil painting and have plenty of room for that. And since I do it, my art room is kind of like my workplace for everything. I have in my desk, I have drawers on each side, 3 of them, where I keep a lot of my pencils. Those are the ones that I choose for a particular project. I usually have what I'm using next to me on a table, but I just realized I goofed again. We have some red in there, so I'll have to add that to, it'll be already prepared for you, but that's in the list too. We need some red. I don't know why I forgot all this. I actually planned this class in March, or I planned on giving this class in March, and then the coronavirus happened, and the facility that I was giving it in canceled all events, understandably, of course, and I wasn't able to do it, so maybe I didn't remember all the pencils that I was using. Okay, so right now my eye is picking up some of that red, and I'm going to put a light layer of that. You can see quite a deep amount of it right there, and you can see a little bit of it on this side here where some of the goldenrod is. Now, as I'm teaching you, I'm pointing to my reference on my art desk here, and I'm pointing to these different details, but I want you to be very careful when I do that to refer to your own reference in front of you, because you're not going to be able to pick up a lot of the details that I'm talking about in a general video with the pear far away from your eyes. I mean, you do have a front row seat compared to my usual workshops, but it's much better to have your reference right next to you like I do with my own here. Okay, so I'll put a little smear of red there, very light touch, a very light touch with the red at the top here, very light touch. pulling it down somewhat down here on the left side, and as I get to the middle part, I'm going to put just a slight bit more amount of pressure there. Not too much, just enough to get the general hint of the color there. Again, we don't want to capture the entire amount of the hue all at once so that we can continue layering. So far, the colored pencil paper I think is working out okay. I don't really care for how thin the paper itself is, but the surface seems to gather the layers rather well, but a lot of that will be better understood when I burnish, which I will do in a moment. Because I'm using colored pencil paper in this particular workshop, I'm doing it as my own experiment, really, taking the opportunity to do it. I don't want you to feel pressure to have been using the colored pencil paper yourself. I noticed it wasn't easy to find when I went back to Hobby Lobby. You could go anywhere, really, Michael's or Hobby Lobby, whatever place is near you. I ordered mine online, and I really prefer to order my materials online because generally speaking, they are a lot less money. That comes into play especially with colored pencils. If I go to Dick Blick, I can get these. I usually buy my colored pencils individually. If I were to buy an entire pack of them, really, practically speaking, in terms of what you're really going to use over the course of time or even your lifetime, there's going to be like a fourth of the colors you're never going to touch. And everybody has their own preferences with colors, and some of them you're just not going to find appealing. So over time, like I said, I shared that here earlier, I have a desk and it's got 3 drawers next to it. I have a number of each drawer has a different selection of color coordinations. I build up my own repertoire of what I normally use a lot, and I pay careful attention when I start a new project to know the colors that I need. So I order individual pencils to save money according to what I'm going to need. And I'm adding a little bit of orange here. Well, not orange, vermilion I'm adding on top of the red just to give it a little nuance. That's number 921. And now the advantage of that, as I hear the ice cream man in the background, is, well, the disadvantage is I have no ice cream. The advantage of ordering the individual color pencils online is if I went to get this color pencil at any art store or hobby store, and I don't single out the names because they're all pretty much the same in terms of prices, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, what have you. This pencil will cost me, I don't even remember, but it's somewhere between $2.29 to $2.69 even by now it might be. I don't even know. But I can get this pencil for $1.29 or less if I order them 10 at a time, maybe even 99 cents at Dick Blick's. So even though you have to pay for the shipping when you buy a supply, it's much better to pay for it that way, and you're going to find the same kind of experience really no matter what you buy. It could be paper, it could be the pencils, or whatever you buy. Generally online they're going to be a bit cheaper, and if you buy a number of them all at once, the shipping doesn't really matter quite so much. And certainly, at least for me personally, and certainly during this time frame now where you have to wear masks everywhere, and not everything is open, depending upon where you live, of course. Having things shipped directly to your house is a lot more convenient. So that's really what I do, and I like to plan ahead with my different projects. I do that not only with my workshops, but with my own personal work, so that I know what colors I'm using. My next selection of color will be Sienna Brown. That's number 945. Okay. Now I'm going to use a very light touch with this because it's rather dark. But I'm mixing it a little bit on top of the pear here. Pull it down where some of the shading is on the left. As it goes down toward the bottom, it gets a little darker, and I'm putting a ever so much of more pressure as it mixes with the red. And you can see as I do that without even getting to the burnishing yet, the simple fact that I'm mixing light layers on top of light layers is already creating quite a nice visual layering effect where the colors are blending together and the pencil grain is starting to disappear, and it's just looking a lot more like real texture instead of crayon. This is why it is so important to remember how to use the pressure of your hand with the colored pencils. Unfortunately, because it's something that you kind of have to get the hang of, when I teach people not to do that, they tend to put such a light feathery layer on top of the picture that it's so light that it would be really more effective if they put a little bit more layering on that. But the good thing about that is that the more you learn colored pencils, the more you practice, you're really going to get the hang of it after a while, and it's not going to be that really major of a deal. Some people have started out too light, which I would, as a problem, starting out too light is the best problem. Starting out too dark really defeats the purpose of layering, so that's really where you want to be careful. Alrighty. Starting to have a little progress here. I don't know about you, but with the pressure of moving, and then there's been some difficulties and challenges along the way, I myself really needed to sit down and relax and just chill and draw. I hope you feel the same way. Art and drawing, especially drawing, can be very relaxing. Painting is relaxing, and other forms of art are relaxing, but drawing, especially with colored pencils, has so much repetitive methodology to it. It's so methodical and so repetitive that you can just kind of sit back and gel and relax and enjoy your subject and enjoy the strokes of the pencil and just enjoy the journey. You can just kind of sit back and do that. There are other things that you can help with that too. You can listen to music, some nice calming music. I know my preference for music isn't exactly calming. I don't normally listen to music like that when I'm heavy metal while I'm doing artwork. I usually listen to Christian radio. I listen to a lot of Moody Radio, has a lot of teaching and talking kind of sharings on that station. I just kind of chill and listen to that, but I don't always do that because naturally colored pencils And drawing lends to the wish of just relaxing, and sometimes you just want quiet. Maybe you've been shut in for so long and your home has a lot of kids or a lot of noise, and just want to shut yourself in a room somewhere and chill. Or, maybe on the other hand, you have a different problem and you're all alone. You've been spending most of your time alone, and it kind of gets your mind off of it and gives your mind something creative and edifying to do, so that it enriches your life and enriches the level of your peace. You can see as I'm talking here, I'm adding a lot of subtle nuance with the sienna brown. If you watch what I'm doing, I'm mixing it very subtly, very lightly. I'm merging it with the green, and I'm merging it with the gold and the red, so that you can see already I didn't even burnish it yet, and it's having a realistic look to it. Now, because of the nature of filming, and because your eyes are not as close to my paper as mine are, it looks a little more wonderfully layered than it actually is in reality. From my own eyes right here, there's still a lot of paper grain, a lot of direction to the pencils. There's a lot of that going on, and I don't want you to be afraid of that. If you are seeing a lot of pencil lines and seeing pencil grain, embrace it. Don't worry about it. It will disappear over time. In some ways, it's something that actually gives the picture more character. Hold on one second. It gives it more character in the sense that, as you've noticed, perhaps, what I usually do whenever I'm drawing, hold on. What I usually do whenever I draw any subject is I basically follow the contours of what I'm drawing. The shape of the pear, the shading has a downward angle to it. You can see the streaks in it. I'm following those streaks. But as I get to the bottom of the pear, I curve my pencil lines with the pear, and I curve the coloring with the shape of the pear. That's not something crucially important that if you don't do it, it'll be awful. If you did it opposite, but still did the same shading, it really wouldn't be that big deal, big of a deal. It really just gives it more character with the pencil lines, and it teaches your eye, as we go along, you're training your eye to feel or see the shape of the object and the shading of what you're doing. So it kind of teaches your eye to do that. And now we'll be doing something, something many of you are familiar with, of course, but if you've never taken a colored class before, it's called burnishing. It's a very technical and wonderful sounding word for something so very simple. You see, with colored pencils, now mainly on a white surface, which is mostly what most people use. Someday we'll get to the colored surface in one of my workshops, but the white color pencil serves basically as a paintbrush. And now what I mean by that is this isn't paint, it's colored pencils. As I said, colored pencils is made out of wax. Because it's made out of wax, you can layer it, and it has a property that can be blended and smeared and blend together. Now, burnishing with a white colored pencil is going to do something really cool. It doesn't serve as a color on this white surface. I'm going to take the white colored pencil and I'm going to go over all the layers that I put on here. And as I do, since colored pencils is made out of wax and the white colored pencil is made out of wax, it's going to blend the layers together. It's going to smooth them together. It's going to create a richness and pull the color out with richness. And it's going to press the colored pencil layers into the grain of the paper. Now that's not going to be immediately apparent the first time I do it. This is something that I will do repetitively. We don't just do it once. We don't just do it twice. We do it throughout. So in other words, I just did a number of layers on the pear, and I'm going to burnish them. And then after I do that, we're going to do more layers and then burnish again. So here we go with the first layer of burnishing. Now I'm going to take my white color pencil and I'm going to go over it just like I did with the other colors with the white. And I usually go against the grains of the pencil lines that I put on there so that it better serves to blend the colored pencils together. So, even though it has this wonderful fancy name, it's really quite a simple thing. But even though it is simple, really, this is kind of the secret of colored pencils. Certainly the secret of realistic painterly colored pencils is the process of burnishing. Going over especially on the left side where most of the layering is. I'm going right over that with the white colored pencil. I tend to use a slightly more pressure than I did when I added the layers, but not so much, again, that I end up putting too much and obliterating the grain of the paper. Right now, the grain of the paper is our friend, because once that starts disappearing, there won't be that many more layers that we can add to the colored pencil. Alright, here we go. Okay. I wish I had the ability to move the camera closer so you can really see the effect here. Some of you that have been to my workshops already know about it, but if you've never taken a workshop, it's not immediately apparent. Okay. So I took the white color pencil, blended all that in there. And the cool thing about that is that certainly does have effect already. But the greatest effect is when I go right back over top of what I burnished. Colored pencils is very repetitive. It's really not rocket science. Once you get the basics down, which is layering and burnishing, it's repetition. It's building the subject, one layer on top of another layer on top of another layer, repeating the layers, repeating the colors, pulling them and darkening them and forming the shape. We're building the shape. That's so important with colored pencils. I'll be using goldenrod here, number 1034, and going back over what I burnished with a white colored pencil. And as we continue to add more layers on top of what we burnished, it's really going to start having an even more wonderful effect. I say words like wonderful and exciting because it really is exciting for me. I mean, colored pencils it's a sneaky medium. You really don't know what to expect when you're going in. But when you find out how to do it, it's so cool that you start with something that looks like crayon. You start with something that's simply a pencil, of all things. And you can do some really cool things with it. It's so cool. Okay. Pull down a little goldenrod in the green there. Very good. Okay. Very good. Okay, I'm gonna, let's see, let's get out our ginger root. Ginger root. Yes, indeed. It's a pencil and not a food. Number 10. What does that say? 1084. 1084? Yep, 1084. I'll be using the goldenrod on the right side of the pear, on the lightness of the yellow to give it some more nuance and to blend it in towards the shading. Okay, there we go. Put some down here on the bottom there. Goldenrod is a kind of more dusky color than the yellow. So I see I'm going to have to enhance some of that yellow there. So we'll be using yellow. I can't call out the number of the yellow because they put the price tag right over the number, and I don't remember what the number is really. I don't even use the numbers. I only use it in the class because it sometimes helps people find the colors more when they have a large pack of colored pencils. So I'll be using yellow on the right side of the pear here and giving a lot more brightness to the pear. Now, if you look at my own picture here, I can see I have kind of a dig of graphite paper up there that I don't particularly care for, so I'm going to take a razor blade and scrape the surface of that line right there and go over it with my eraser, which again is my kneaded eraser. You may have one, or it really doesn't matter, whichever one you prefer. Kneaded erasers are mostly good for graphite pencil. They lift it up off of the paper without destroying the paper. So we'll put some yellow in here. Okay, put some yellow in there. Let's pull it over to the left of the pear here, especially on the top. Kind of mix it in here. You'll notice that a light color like yellow also burnishes as well. You can always use a light color to burnish. I find that in order to get a real richness to a subject, white works the best. You will notice after you burnish that it has a lighter hue, but we go over it with colored pencil after that, so that sort of disappears. The white has the effect of having a more painterly tone to it, which I like. But that's not something I pursue on purpose necessarily. I don't sit down to a colored pencil piece and say, I want to draw a painting. It's really just the effect of the colored pencils themselves, which is cool. Okay. One of my experiments is I don't know how long of a time my laptop is going to allow me to record, so I hope it will fit the whole entire workshop on here. We'll see. I'll be using Sienna Brown next, number 945, and I'll be concentrating on the mid area of the pear here where there's much more shading. I will be mixing it upward into the top part with a lighter hand and a little bit into the bottom where the green is as well, but I'm going to start in the middle and mix it over the red area there. As you go along and have more layers on there, it's not a terrible thing to have a little bit more pressure, just as long as you don't really squash your lead into the paper. That's the worst thing to do. Again, gauging the pressure of your hand is something that's learned over time. Alrighty, so we're getting some more shading in the mid area of the pear there. I'll pull some of the sienna down into the green area, especially down here on the bottom. There's a shaded area. Okay, maybe mix a little bit in. Not too much, but some in the green, in the mid part of the green there. Now, as I go along here, I can see our green needs a lot more work. So what I'll be doing is adding apple green, number 912. Alrighty. So I'm glad you can I'm glad that you can spend time with me doing this. I really didn't know what to expect. Of course, I've given many classes. I've given classes for over 4 years, but I've never done it in terms of a video before, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect because I'm kind of I'm all by myself here, and I don't know where people are, and I can't answer questions, and I'm probably, I would imagine, unless you're familiar with color pencils and you've already gone to several of my classes, that I may very well be going a lot too fast for what you're able to follow. But the fortunate thing with that is that you can pause your video and you can always stop and come back to it at another time if you feel overwhelmed. If you don't have time necessarily to do the amount of work we're doing, it's a little different than the class where we're going to be there for 2 hours. If you had enough after an hour, or even half an hour, you can pick it up at another time and come back to it. So that's one of the advantages of, I guess you're taking me home with you in a sense, and other than my my workshops. We may not finish a piece in the workshop, and a number of people that really enjoy colored pencils will finish their art piece at home. And I really love when people do that. To me, that blesses me more than anything, because it shows me that you're excited about what you're doing and you're getting something out of it, and so much so that you're pursuing it on your own. But this way, since you will have permanently the colored pencil workshop to refer to, uh, you really can go at your own pace anytime you want. I would kindly ask you, though, when you do purchase the workshop, it is officially yours, but please, in respect for me to make, a certain amount from giving the class, which is a lot more work than it seems. This is like my 3rd day working on the workshop, even though I'm only doing the pencil part now. If you would please refer people to the page where they can order the video instead of sharing them with people without them actually paying for it. I would really appreciate your kindness with that, which I know I really don't even have to ask, of course. Let's see. Should I use light umber? I do that a lot, actually. If you're confused as to what color to use, Just take out one of your pencils and hold it right up to the subject and see what color you really need. I was leaning towards sienna brown, but I think I'm going to use light umber. Light umber is number 941. Now, I'm going to put a very light outline on the left here where you can see the pear has a kind of a darker outline. And then I'm going to pull some of that light umber into the muted gold there. Okay, not too much. Then I think I'll add some of it in the middle of the pear here, especially at the top where the lighter shading is. We're getting a lot of progress on the left side of the shading of the pear here, though. I'm finding it's looking pretty good there. So much so that I think we're going to add just a little bit more dark tone in there. And by doing that, we're going to use dark brown now, number 946. Now I'm going to apply a layer of the dark brown in the very middle of the pear here to really darken the reddish sienna area. Speaking of sienna, I don't think I actually used that color yet. I'll have to remedy that. That's one of my favorite colors indeed. Got some brown in here. Okay. So I'll get out the sienna. Maybe I did use that. I guess I did. Oh wait, no. Terracotta, that's what I meant to say. Terracotta, one of my favorite colors. That's really going to make the red area nice here. So I have terracotta, number 944. I'm going to very lightly put some in that little red area there. I'm going to merge it into some of the red mid-tone in the middle of the pear. Kind of range it up top toward the area there that is shaded. I'm going to spread it around on the left here on the pear. Mix it on down there into the green. You can see that there's an effect with the pear there that most of the lighting is coming from the right and hitting that side of the pear. There is also a light source coming from the left, and it's hitting right in the middle of the shaded area, but you're also getting a diffuse sort of light coming up from the surface the pear is on, so that even though the green area is darker and shaded, it has a muted lighter area in the middle of the shading. That's from ambient light bouncing off the surface of the table. Okay. Now, let's see. I'm going to take some dark brown, and I really feel like I have a need of highlighting the very dark portion of the bottom of the pear here. Sometimes if you've been working on a certain area of a picture for a long time and you've been staring at it for a while, it helps to range around different parts of the subject, and especially if something really dark like a shaded area, it gives your eye something different to look at, and then once that is there, you can see I have a darker line on the bottom here. It gives me a different perspective on the colors above it so that I know whether I put enough there or not. So I'm going to mix some brown on the bottom here, and I can see that my brown is rather one-dimensional. So I'm going to take some of the apple green, number 912, and I'm going to layer it over top of the brown to give the brown more nuance, so it doesn't look flat and uninteresting. I guess it's pretty obvious by now, with the time that we spent already doing the pear, that we're certainly not drawing the color of the background. I think the background's cool, and it certainly plays well off of the color of the pear, but we certainly don't have the time to do the background in a workshop. As I said, most of my workshops are 2 hours, and because of the need to have people go at their different pace, and because it's really a social event just as much as drawing, most of the time we don't finish a subject. So sometimes there are certain people that have really done well in the classes, and they'll take it home and they'll do the whole picture. I've really been impressed with so many people's work. It's really been cool to see. I really love that. I must say I love it when people share that with me. Okay. We'll get out our dentist drill here. So much less painful, of course, than a dentist. And I'm going to put some goldenrod up here, number 1034, right up here on the very top left. Okay. I'll put a little bit of it around the highlighted area. My highlighted area right now is straight white. And you can see in the pear, compared to the other white area, it's not really white. But I'm leaving it there right now so that I can work on it later on. But I think what I would like to do before I go on to something else, though, is burnish. And I especially want to burnish in a few specific places. Okay, I'm going to burnish right over top of the left highlights. Now, it's going to smear a little bit of the color into the white. That's perfectly fine, because it's actually going to need more of that later on. So I'm going to smear it in there on the highlight. And then I don't know what level you are in with your picture, but you can see that the contours of my shaded area have a rather rough edge to them, so I'm going to burnish the edge of the contour of the shaded area. And the apple green that I put in the bottom of the pear here also needs a good deal of burnishing. And there's one thing that I can see with the colored pencil paper now that I've gotten this far in the picture, and that is it doesn't require as much burnishing. For some reason, the layers on top of layers are mixing well together themselves, and the paper is so smooth that it really doesn't require a lot of burnishing. That will be different for you if you're using a different surface. If you chose to go all out and use an artboard, you will be doing much layering and much burnishing indeed. If you chose to use watercolor paper, you're going to use quite a bit of burnishing and layering there too. Whoops. Hold on there. Got a little violent with my wiping there. Oh boy. Yep, that's what it's really like at home in my studio. Messy Marvin is at work. That's my nickname. That's why I need quite a very large covering on the rug on the floor when I do oil painting. And I do need to wear my painting clothes, oh yes. That's a good thing about colored pencils, though. You can take them anywhere. They're not messy. It's a very controlled medium. That's a very remarkable thing about colored pencils, and if you've ever searched online if you've ever seen other colored pencil artists, if you have looked at any of my own art at a show or in the books or what have you, it tends toward realism because colored pencils naturally kind of, you have, well, you know, painting is so different than colored pencils. Like I said, you're putting color instantly on the canvas and mixing colors right on the canvas. And in all honesty, when you're painting, though you have most of the control of what you're doing, partly the paint and the brush has control. But with a colored pencil, you have the most control probably out of any other medium there is. The closest thing to colored pencils in terms of a medium is watercolors, and there are some watercolor artists that use watercolors similar to colored pencils in the sense that they put a lot of layers on the paper to the point where it looks just as realistic as any other medium. And there is a lot of control with that, but of course when you have water involved and brushes involved, half of the control, well, not half, that's an exaggeration, much of the control is the brush and the medium itself. But you can see while we're working here and while you're working, your hand and your eye, your hand pressure, the pencil, you have so much control over what you're doing. So that really what you're producing, it can lead to a good deal of realism since you have so much control over it. But I really should stress, you know, again, it's very important. Um, you're going to find the more you do color pencils, if you enjoy it as a medium, you're going to settle into your own style. That might be realism. It might be having a painterly effect. It might be having a lot of layers. But during the course of my classes, I've noticed a wide range of styles. Some people have a light texture. Some people leave the the paper texture in there. Some people have a impressionistic swirl of lines. Those are all perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, that's what makes art exciting. I've said this so many times, and it's true. I would really like to do it someday. I would like to take one subject and have a class where, say, there's 12 people in it, and each person is going to do the subject, and you will notice when you sit down with people, even though a lot of people knock their own art, we're all our own worst critics, you're going to see that each person did a great picture. It's so beautiful, but not one of them is the same. None of them. And that's not what I'm here teaching you. Again, I'm not here to teach you how to draw colored pencils like I do. If you want to do that, if you like the painterly style and realism, that's perfectly fine. Um, that's perfectly acceptable, but I'm not teaching you really how to draw like me. I'm teaching you the basics of colored pencils, and wherever your personality and your style and your patience, perhaps, wherever that leads, that's what you will settle into, and it's all good. I mean, you could pick any artist on the face of the earth, and they may even have the same style, but you're never going to see two artists that look exactly the same. If you like my style of art, and I've heard people say that, I want to draw like you, which really doesn't mean you want to be like me. It means you want to draw realistically, and you want to have that painterly form to it, and that's fine. But when you do it, you're still going to have your own style, and it's still going to look like you, so to speak. Okay, so as I was speaking there, I outlined the stem. I did that with light umber, number 941. Now that I've outlined it, I'm going to fill it with light umber. As I said, even a very dark object like the brown stem, we're building the subject working from light to dark. So I'm putting light umber, the lightest hue that I can find in there, down first. You can see, it's very hard to see in the video, well, you can see in front of you on your own reference. The stem is shiny and it has highlights. Again, with colored pencils, we leave that white area blank. So I'll be filling the stem with light umber, a light layer here. Don't have to be too terribly careful though. I'm not going to be as light as a feather, as long as there's still green there, because it's very dark color anyway. I'll pull some of it down here, and I'll avoid doing some of the white there. There's a very thin outline on the left there, and a very thin outline on the right of the contour of the stem. And then I'll fill out the rest with the light umber. Okay. You know, it's funny. As a personal aside, my goal with this workshop was to try to be a little quiet and peaceful and relax and do the picture, but I guess my mind has been so full of moving, and we've had a few glitches and difficulties lately that my mind is kind of a little racing a little bit, and I can't seem to stop talking. Which I guess I'm giving helpful information, but it's not exactly conducive to you relaxing, perhaps, and just us all just sitting here and being quiet. But again, you know, it's my very first workshop, and I'll learn over time, and over time it'll have a better presentation and better lighting, better environment when we move. I'm really looking forward to it, though. I was a little apprehensive about it. I wasn't sure if I would be able to do it, and if I had what it took really to do a video. It's a lot more complicated than it seems. As I said, this is the third day I've been working on it, and this is the first day I'm doing the actual subject. But I think I enjoy it, even though I'm not present with you. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing as what we do when we are together. It just so happens that I don't get to see all your all your smiley faces. I do miss y'all. I hope you're doing well. My, it's certainly been a challenging time, hasn't it? Very challenging. Not only challenging in terms of practicality and functioning and masks and what's open and what's not, but I'm using sienna brown now, lightly layering that over what I did with the light umber and the stem. I think it's been very challenging emotionally. For some, it may be more difficult than others. Myself, I lived such an isolated life growing up, and even into my mid-30s, because of my anxiety problems, that I'm sort of used to it. And in terms of what I do as a person, almost everything I do involves being quietly alone, doing my artwork, Bible study, reading. All the activities I enjoy happen to have a measure of peaceful alone time. So you would think I would have handled this experience pretty well, but and I am right now. I've kind of settled into a routine. But in the beginning, I really didn't feel all that wonderful. I wouldn't say it was depressing. It was just, I guess anything that's change for anyone can be difficult, and it was just hard to adjust to it emotionally. But I did want to say that I do miss spending time with you and drawing with you and hearing how you're all doing. And if you're new to this workshop, I welcome you. I hope you'll join us again. Certainly you can do that from anywhere in the English-speaking world now, and certainly anywhere in any state that you prefer now with the video. I'm using a dark brown. It's number 946, and I'm going over the stem. I'm especially going to put a dark outline of that on the very left of the bottom of the stem there. There we go. The middle part is very dark too. I'll mix some of that up there at the top of the stem. Okay. Now, even though the stem is a dark color, we're still basically doing the same thing, which is layering and burnishing. So now that I have a few layers of different browns on the stem, I'll be burnishing that area with the white colored pencil. There we go. You can see as you do that it certainly smears and blends the colors together, but it makes it look a lot lighter. But again, that's not a problem. That's something we want because we're building our subject, and we do not get color pencils instantly. For most, that's relaxing. For some, that can be hard. There are not many people, but some people find the repetitive nature and the time involved to be rather frustrating. Most people find it relaxing, though. I mean, if you really come at it with that attitude to begin with, that you're going to be spending time, you're going to be setting a time aside for yourself to just chill and draw and hopefully relax and enjoy the process. The repetitive nature and the time involved is going to serve to be very calming and relaxing. That is, of course, if you don't break one of the primary rules, and that's a hard one. And that is whenever an adult sits down and tries to do something like art, as soon as we are of a mind to want to do something to the best of our ability, we usually start putting down what we're doing or being negative about what we're doing. But you never see kids do that, do you? When kids draw, they just sit down and have a grand old time. They don't barely even care whether it's realistic or if it, somebody could have green hair and the sky could be purple. That's perfectly fine with them. They just have so much fun. So, as adults, we just want to kind of remind ourselves to learn as we go and take our time. Nothing that we endeavor in life is going to come instantly. Everything takes practice. The practice and the learning, if we relax and do it, can be very exciting to watch yourself progress. I know a number of you have so many drawings by now that you can probably compare the ones that you've done now to when you started, and they look remarkably different, I'm sure, which is exciting, isn't it? But anyway, we just want to remind ourselves to have fun. If your goal is to have fun, to relax, to enjoy the process, to enjoy creativity itself, you're going to learn, and you really don't need to give yourself a hard time because you're naturally going to learn. Personally, I think God gave us the gift of creativity as a natural sort of relaxing thing. And that if we're not too hard on ourselves and we just kind of go with the gift of creativity and the joy of it, we're going to learn as we go. But as soon as we start saying, oh, I don't like the way this looks awful, and this doesn't look like so-and-so's, and it doesn't look like that, and I messed up here, and the more we start concentrating on that, we think we're teaching ourselves something, but we're actually hindering the creative process by being negative about what we're doing. And really, yeah, I'm going to say this as a complete hypocrite, but whenever you do something, you really, as a human, should expect you're going to make a mistake. And I say that as a complete hypocrite because I tend to be a perfectionist, and if I make a mistake, I'm not exactly happy. But I know if I expect them and give myself a break, it's going to go so much further to learning. A lot more, and a lot quicker, too. It's a lot more freeing. Okay, so I just added black in the highlights of the stem. I'm currently adding terracotta as some highlights there to really bring out some nuance in the stem. And I think I'm going to burnish that once more. I should have looked at the clock before I started because I have no idea how long my workshop is going, but again, I'm still learning. I'm learning as I go along with these video workshops too. I'm experimenting and learning, so I guess the next time I should keep an eye on what time it is, because I don't want to go too much over 2 hours, and I have no idea how long I've taken. I think I might have taken 2 hours, I don't know. But that's okay. There's always fast forward. I just hope my laptop can hold the space. But I'll find out. And I can always shorten it and edit it. And like I said, if you need to go make dinner or go do something else, or you feel like you need to you're just done enough, come back another day. Turn on the video again and start off where you left off. As a matter of fact, in my art, I find that actually helps. The more I stare at something, say I spent a day, suppose I spent 5 hours in one day staring at this pear. Doing that, I lose objectivity. You start losing all the details, and the pear, it just doesn't have the impact that it did when you started. So when you set it aside and come back to it the next day, you're going to see things that you missed, and see things that you want to do better, or see things that you want to highlight a little more. Since I work regularly with my art, I schedule my time. Normally, for the first half of the day, I either do all my business work, which is quite a lot, whether it be websites or making videos or contacting people or finding ways to find exposure for my art. I do a great deal of that work. I do that in the first half of the day normally, and I also I take time to have Bible study, and it's fairly lengthy because I'm working with an older gentleman who's discipling me, which is basically teaching me. He's 85 years old, and that means he has a lot to teach me. I don't know what other relevance that would have, but so that kind of takes up a lot of my day. But after I do all that kind of stuff, I spend the rest of the day drawing. So I have a fairly, I wouldn't say regimented, but I have a day that's planned out. And perhaps unlike other people that do art, I guess it depends on your personality. I'm talking and I'm not telling you what I'm doing. I'm using vermilion again, number 921. And I'm mixing it on the right side with the yellow because I would like to get some more nuance for the part that meets the shading. Anyway, what I was saying is that I do artwork regularly, and I don't usually do artwork according to my mood. A lot of people think that artists have to be struck with the mood and the inspiration to do art. Which, if you do art regularly, that's not necessarily true. It may be true for some people, for me, but I've been drawing for so many years, and since it is what I do, I mean, this is what I do. This is the main purpose and ministry and mission of my life is to do art. So I can do art. I don't mean that as a boast. I meant practically speaking. Whenever I have to or want to do art, I can sit down and do it. It's just a matter of, taking the time, sitting at my desk, and getting started. And since I do a great deal of it, I'm staring at pictures for quite a long time during the day. And that's where having two subjects going on at once helps a great deal so that I can refresh my eyes and where I would take time to say, if I wanted to be done with this pear today, I would put it aside and get back to it tomorrow or the next day. And I know whenever I do that, when I come back to it, I will notice things in there that I want to add and add some depth to. Because if you're not staring at it for too long, I mean, if you are staring at it for too long, I got that backwards, you lose that objectivity. But I'll let you in on a little secret, though. If you don't want to put your artwork aside and you want to keep working, there are some people that just do it all day long. It's so relaxing. If you want to get a fresh perspective on what you're doing, what I do is I'll take this picture and I'll take it off the table here and I'll go in the bathroom and I'll put it in front of the mirror. And that way my eye is seeing it completely different. And I'll look at it and say, oh, I missed that shading there. Or, oh, it really needs some red or green there. I really missed that. I was hoping to put some more in there. And, since it gives you a different perspective, it helps you to see a little better. I'm using beige now, number 997. I know people have remarked with me that taking a picture of your art piece with the phone has the same exact effect. You could take a picture of your phone, and when you look at the photo, because it gives you a different perspective of what you've been staring at for hours or for quite a long time, it gives you a freshness of eye to pick up what you missed. So I'm using the beige to make the yellow a more earthy kind of yellow and not so bright like a parrot's feathers or something. And I'm pulling it into the white highlight. Now there's something in here you may have noticed by now that we're not going to get to in a workshop, and I normally do not even focus on because it's really not important for our purposes. But I will mention that. You can see in this pear that it has a good deal of texture. That is, there's a lot of dots. There's these earthy kind of brown dots throughout the pear and green dots on the bottom. That's a very simple thing, and I really wouldn't even get to that in a workshop, and you can go over it just by doing that if you prefer. The dots are brown mostly on the left side, so you can kind of stipple it in there with your pencil. Now it's going to look a little odd when you do it that way, but if, say, you take a yellow colored pencil and burnish over top of what you just stippled, it blends those dots in there with the coloring. Now, again, with that kind of thing, the main thing that I want to stress there is we're working from light to dark with everything, shading, color, the hues. And when it comes to the details and complications of a subject, we work from simple to complicated. In other words, if you've noticed, what we did is we started very simple. We started with yellow and gold and we built the shading very simply, and then over time we got more complicated by adding red and brown and different colors. The same is true with details. You start out simple, a few stipplings of dots there I will start out with. I started out with a very simple outline on my stem of the highlights of the white on there, but I did not finish them. I gave a general overview of them. Towards the end of my picture is when I pull out more of the detail. I start out very general with detail, and just like everything else is a building process, I build more layers as we go along. So I wouldn't normally get to it yet. But as I near the end of my picture, you can see texture with the red on the pear that's blotchy. I did not do any of that on this pear. The pear this pear, which I drew, compared to the subject, is a lot more smooth. In order to capture that, normally I wouldn't do it yet, because I'm not really near the end of my picture by any means. It looks pretty good so far, but at least in terms of my own style, I would push it to the end part of realism and painterliness, but it looks quite fine right now. I would put in blotches. Right now I'm using red to do that. Blotches, just little blotches. Kind of circular, excuse me, circular motions with the red to give it that blotchiness that you see in the subject. And I'll do that wherever I see some of the darker shading. And as I do that splotchiness, it's going to look a little glaring to the eye as I'm doing it right now. But the way to easily solve that is to burnish it. Now, when we get to something like this, I don't really need to burnish it with the white colored pencil. Really what I'm going to do is I'm going to lose a lot of the color. So I'm going to take a light color, like a vermilion, and I'm just going to smear those blotches with the vermilion. And that way it will make it more, excuse me, smeared and layered into the pear itself, and it looks more natural. If you, I guess to the eye, at least to my eye, I don't know if it's true for you, the thing that I find most striking are the blotches, especially near the highlights on the left. So I'm going to kind of stipple a few dots in there where that highlight is. Put some stippling there with some goldenrod. Okay. Then I'll take some, I apparently lost it somewhere, I don't know where. Okay, I lost my light, dark brown. Light umber, sienna we got. There we go. Dark brown. I'm going to stipple very lightly some of the dots near the highlight on the left here with a dark brown. Okay, I think I'll pull some of that over into the mid part of the pear to give it some texture. I'm going to blotch some of it down toward the green because we can see some blotchy kind of hues there. And then I'll take the vermilion again and smear that blotchiness in there so it doesn't look so stark on top of all the layering that we just did. And especially near the highlight on the left, I'm going to use goldenrod to do that. Actually, I think I'll pull the goldenrod a little tighter in there too to make that highlight not quite so bright as the one on the right. And then I'll take the white and go back over the highlight itself to smear it all in there. Now I think we're kind of running out of time, but I don't want to leave it quite where we are. I think what I'm going to do is we have quite a nice pear floating in midair on white paper. So, I'm going to take, first of all, I think I'll use ginger root. I'm going to take ginger root. Now, if you look on the left side of the pear, it has two shadows. That's because the pear has more than one light source. The pear has a very small brown shaded area right next to the pear on the bottom. Then it has a very long shaded area of diffused shadowing. I'm going to highlight that diffused area with a layer of ginger root. It's not really the specific color of that shaded area, but the thing with that is, since we're working from light to dark always, even with shading, it's going to serve as an underlying hue to the actual shading. So I have a layer of that shading. I now am going to use 50% gray, and 50% gray is rather dark compared to that very light colored shading. So I'm going to put a very light layer there, very light, on top of that diffused, very long shadow. It really doesn't even take that much. You can see it already. We now have a pear on a surface instead of floating in midair. And I'll take the dark brown, number 946, and that very tiny little lip of shadow underneath the pear. I'm going to highlight it with that dark brown. It's just a little piece there. And then, since I did that, it just revealed the lack of clarity in the darkness of the very bottom of the pear shading. I will be taking black and using that and putting a layer of black on the very, very bottom of the pear where it meets the surface of the table. Okay. Now, if you look at the edge of the pear, where the shading is, it has a very small dark edge to it. I'm going to highlight that. I think I'll add just a touch of the black in the very small brown shaded area. And then I'll take the white colored pencil. I will burnish the shaded area. Burnish the black and the brown together. Okay, then I will take the area of the diffuse shading here that's much longer. Again, the pear has more than one light source. That's why sometimes when you are drawing a subject, you'll see more than one shadow. That is a clue that there is more than one light source. That's why there's more than one highlight on the pear. The brightest light source is on the right of our picture. Okay. Let's see. So we're nearing the end of our workshop here. We've gotten pretty far. Since colored pencils is all about layering, and you see what the main The main challenge with a workshop is the people that attend a workshop, they have several different uh, levels of skill. In other words, you're going to find people that have done, again, I forgot to mention what I was doing. I'm just naturally drawing here. I'm using vermilion by adding some highlights in the shaded area on the left here. And I'm going to do some of that. Mix some of that with the, I'm going to use a very, very light touch. But this yellow, it doesn't, not very apparent in the video. I see it looks better in the video actually than it does in my eye. But this yellow is very bright. I'm going to add some vermilion in there. Anyway, like what I was saying, when you have a workshop, there are people with different skill levels. Some people have used colored pencils before. Some people have been coming for years to the workshops and are quite advanced. Some people have never used colored pencils in their life and are very unfamiliar with them. There are so many different levels of skill that I have to slow down the workshops, of course, but the main difficulty with that is you want to have a workshop that is going to engage the interest of people. But if the workshop subject is so complicated that people who are not familiar with color pencils are not going to be able to tackle that right away. But if you do something that's so simple, like say my subject was an egg, we can get an egg done in half an hour. and it would never be as interesting as doing something like this. This is a very simple shape, but it has so much coloring in it. It is really exciting. So I have to keep that in mind when I do the workshops. My workshops are for everyone. They don't have a skill level to them. Maybe someday they will. I'll have longer workshops, maybe advanced and beginners and moderates, and I'll be addressing things like that. But right now my workshops are for everyone. That's why I offer templates. Yes, I want you to learn something. Yes, I want you to learn how to do colored pencils. But the chief thing that's the most important when I'm giving a workshop is that you're having fun and you're enjoying what you're doing, and I hope you are coming away with a sense of calming peace. That's very important. In terms of the social workshops, what's also important is socializing. People get to know each other over the course of the workshops, and they have fun sharing their lives with each other and talking and just having fun. So I try to be flexible with all. I'm burnishing now the vermilion on top of the yellow. I try to balance all that, and unfortunately one of the ramifications of that is, since I can't choose too simple of a subject, normally we don't completely finish what we're doing in a single 2-hour workshop. Depends on how complicated the subject is. Now, to my mind, I'm looking at this, especially I see on my video monitor. This is a pretty good level to stop at. We've accomplished a lot. Now, personally speaking, on my own, because of the way I do my art and my style and my eye, what my eye sees, is there's a lot more work to do in terms of realism and layering and the specific details of it. Now, that's just my own preference. That's not something I could accomplish in a workshop, of course, because this workshop would turn out to be 3 or 4 hours long, and that's just not practical. And I share that with you just because I want to be transparent about what I do and why I do it, and the different challenges that are there for doing it. So before I say goodbye, first of all, again, I enjoyed spending time with you. I can't tell you how much This day was a very challenging day. I had a number of different stressful things. The delay of the move and the expense of where we're living now draining from moving, and there's been a few other things that have happened that were very stressful and unfortunate, and they're not emergencies or anything. They just, you know, stress. Moving is already so stressful, and you're already on edge, and there's stuff laying all over. It just adds to things, and uh, what I find, and it's really been a blessing, is to spend this time with you, and drawing this picture has calmed me down over the course of the time that we've done it. And I'm going to walk away feeling a lot better, really. And I really, I thank you for vicariously spending the time with me, for following along. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your support and your friendship. I can't tell you, I really can't tell you how many people have been so kind to me with my art, and so kind to my wife Cherie. We have benefited from an immense amount of kindness. That has been one of the most wonderful blessings with my art, is the kindness of people, and it's really helped shape the purpose behind what I do now. Really, the art certainly is important because I'm an artist, but half of why I do what I do and what I'm doing, it's it's important for me to engage people and connect with people and to have personal connections with people. I think God really blesses that. I think we really need it. I think art is ideally suited as a catalyst to connect with other people, a catalyst to explore creativity and the peacefulness of creativity. It's just a real blessing. So I thank you for spending the time. I thank you for purchasing the workshop shop and your support in that sense. I thank you for putting up with me blabbering this whole entire time. I certainly am not like Bob Ross, am I? He's actually quiet for a few minutes. I normally don't talk this much, really. This I really don't talk that much, even in my workshop. I'm a little more quiet, but this was really fun. It really was. I enjoyed this. This simple pear has got so much wonderful coloring in it, and it was really, really relaxing to do, really relaxing to share it with you. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you have any specific questions about technique, especially, with the colored pencil doctor segment, I'll share them in my future videos, and I know you probably want to keep some semblance of your own privacy, so I'll just mention your first name and what town you're from, because I do want you to get the benefit of being recognized for asking the question, and it's just fun to do. But, feel free to ask questions over time as I do each video. I will get to them and answer them. I do plan on doing this regularly. I'm looking forward to it now that I got my first one under the belt. This was really fun. I'm looking forward to doing it again. And certainly that doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing them in person. But this is a great thing to have for people who aren't able to travel, for people who are shut in because of the virus, for people who are shut in because of physical problems, for people who just can't make the workshops on a certain day. And certainly, I think one of the best benefits is you can turn it off whenever you want and come back right to it. And this video, you could refer to it to the next 5 years if you want to. And, it's yours now. Once you have it, it's yours. I'm adding some apple green to give some nuance to the bottom of the pear. There we go. Alrighty. I can see there's a light smear of green on the very right of the pear mixed with the yellow. Let's put some of that in there with the light green, number 920. There we go. So as we wrap up, God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your support. I look forward to hearing from you if you have any feedback. And certainly, as I said before, if you finish your pear, feel free to email me. I love to see them. That really makes my day when I see people finishing the project, and I just love seeing how good you're doing. Some of you are progressing so wonderfully. It's really fun. As I fade off into the sunset here, I'm going to add a little more red in there just to really pull it out and give it a real richness to the eye. There we go. Pull some of it out to the right here. And I'm going to add a little more brown in there, dark brown. There we go. Pull it down into the green a little. Okay. Working very quickly now. Adding some sienna brown on the left side of the pear there to kind of mix it with the green to make it a little more earthy and realistic. I got some real sienna right here in the mid-tone where the red and gold area meets the green. Let's really put some of that in there. Yeah, that's excellent. Get the vermilion out and pull this shading over to the right some. Alrighty. And finally, a final touch of black on the very bottom, just to give the eye a darker hue to look at and something to focus on. Maybe I'll pull it up on the stem there too. Yeah. Oops, excuse my head. Alrighty, there you have it. I think I'm gonna burnish a little bit of the mid part of the pear with goldenrod, just to smear and put some blending in there. Now, I had said in the very beginning I was experimenting for the very first time with Strathmore colored pencil paper. Now, I'll give you my thoughts on it. I very much enjoyed it for a workshop. It's smooth enough that it afforded us the length of time to get much further with a subject. Even though I have an example here, even though the thinness of the paper is not something I prefer, it did not create any problems with crinkling or buckling, so that's not a big issue. I actually like the colored pencil paper for the workshop. Would I use this for my own finished work? No, but that's because there are two different things, like I said. On artboard, it's much more complex, many more hours, and much different. But for a workshop, I would highly recommend it. Now, I don't want you to feel bad if you use something different. You purchase something to use. I gave you a selection of what you could choose from. If you didn't buy the colored pencil paper, I don't want you to feel bad about that. Whatever you use within what I shared with you, or whatever you found on your own that has a stiff surface, is fine. And it's going to boil down to your tastes and what you prefer. But if you do want to try out the colored pencil paper in the future, I would recommend it. Perhaps in our next session we could do that. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not perfect. As a person, I kind of like more texture in my paper, but I think this is worth a second or third shot at using it and seeing exactly what can be done in a workshop. So if you want to go out and buy one of these, as far as I know, I may be wrong, Strathmore is the only one that makes it. I only found it once in an art store. When I last went to go get it, they didn't have it, so I had to order it online. So it's probably more rare to buy than the other things, which are easier to get. So if you want to try it out in the future colored pencil class, feel quite free to. It does have some uses to it, and we'll see how that goes in another class. Before I go, I just want to tighten up that diffuse shading a little bit. Now, if you've gotten this far along with me, or you've returned to your picture at another time to finish the video, don't forget to sign it. It's your work. You did great. Put your signature on there. Indeed. There you have it. Well, my friends, thank you so much for following along. I enjoyed spending the time with you indeed. Until next time, Lord willing, we'll be doing this again. I'm looking forward to that as well. God bless you. Thank you so much.